To all of you. Very, very nice to see you all. Welcome once again. And it's a Rotary meeting. These absolutely fantastic people sitting here. Jim, it's great that you stood for me. I want to thank you. I want to bow down in front of you and thank you for standing for me. That's great. Much appreciated. So my name is Alain Barker, for those of you who I've yet to meet. And I'm your president and very, very happy to be here today. I'm going to start by holding up this control here. And if you want to share screen, that'd be great. So today, there are two things that I want to talk about today as we go into the meeting. There's a festival that I became aware of when I was a little kid. And I was very excited about it every year. It's called Diwali. And it was very close to Guy Fawkes. So as a kid, I was very excited because on the one hand, on the 1 week, there were many, many fireworks in celebration of Diwali. And then obviously Guy Fawkes. November 5th was another celebration that I was very happy about. And as I grew into my adult years, I became aware of how powerful and important this celebration of Diwali is. And so I wanted to be sure that we're all aware of it today. Yesterday was the beginning of Diwali. It's called the Festival of Lights, celebrated mostly by Hindus around the world, lasting 5 or 6 days, depending on where you are in the world. One of the most popular festivals of Hinduism, Diwali symbolizes the spiritual victory of lightness over dark, good over evil, knowledge over ignorance. Let's just take a moment to celebrate in spirit with the more than 3,000 Rotary clubs in India. More than 1 billion people around the world who celebrate this holiday, who draw inspiration from the meaning of Diwali. And in turn, let us draw inspiration from a festival that celebrates, once again, lightness over darkness, good over evil, and knowledge over ignorance. And the second thing that I wanted to mention today, and I'm going to see if I can advance the slide. Could you want to tap it so that I can advance it? There we go. Thank you. Yesterday was the World Polio Day. We've been thinking a lot about this in the last few weeks and months, and it's part of our DNA. So much part of what we stand for and what we do in Rotary these days. And again, just the day that the world focused on this global issue towards a polio-free world, recognizing today we want to definitely recognize the tireless contributions of those on the front lines who play a major role in eradicating the disease. Every year through our funding and a partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Rotary commits $150 million to the global effort to eradicate polio. Your gifts, our gifts, the pennies and dollars and many dollars that we contribute to Rotary International Foundation make this progress possible. So thank you all so much for being so dedicated to the eradication of polio around the world. Okay, that's it. We can stop sharing for a second. We don't have any birthdays this week. Isn't that extraordinary? What happened? What were people doing that week that nothing happened? But we do have, exactly, Charlotte, hopefully Charlotte had a fabulous birthday celebration last week. Good, good. We do have member anniversaries. Tom Boone is 39 years, congratulations. Peter Kroner, 18 years, and Bill Murphy, who's with us once again, 43 years. Okay, now we have a number of guests with us today. So Sally Gaskell, if you'd like to come and join me.
Thank you, Alain. Great to see everybody here. Whitney Kelling is our guest of Jim Bright. Whitney, can you please stand so that we can say hello? Whitney's from the chamber. Winston Schindel has a guest, Phil Emerson. Welcome. Al Helmke is a guest of Jim Bright. I do believe he's our speaker next week. And Megan Gearhart, past president of Rotaract, is here. We love seeing you all. If any of you have an interest in Rotary, please let us know. And Joy Hartner, what about Zoom guests?
Yes, thank you, Sally. We do have 2 guests joining us on Zoom this afternoon. I'd like to welcome Caitlin Burris, who is a guest of Amy Osajima. And then we also have a well-known guest to all of us, Stephanie von Hirschberg is joining us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally, past president. I want to mention that Phil Anderson, is that right? Is a past member of this club and has been away from Bloomington for 3 decades, I believe, something along that lines. And so we just want to welcome you back to Bloomington and very much looking forward to seeing you again. 2 decades, my apologies. Yeah. So a few member updates here that I want to continue with here. Board, we had a great meeting last week. Thank you so much, the members of the board who were with us at the Dimension Mill this past week. We agreed that the city of Bloomington will be a member of the Bloomington Rotary Club. Isn't that great? So we're going to have Alex Crowley, who's director, Holly Warren, who's assistant director for the arts, Lauren Clements, assistant director for sustainability, and Della Rosa, I don't know the first name, unfortunately, assistant director for small business. So we're very much looking forward to the city of Bloomington being part of our, and I should mention just quietly that I had a conversation with the Dimension Mill this morning, and there's a possibility that they will be joining us as well. So that's good news. In addition, the board confirmed new members, Sarah Cochran, Michelle Cohen, and Erica Kovacs. So it's all very, very good news. Okay, a few club updates that I want to, and you can start sharing once again. As you know, Ryla was unbelievable this past weekend. It was absolutely incredible. And thanks to Megan, thanks to Joy, thanks to so many people, Lauren Snyder, who had such a significant role in making this event so successful. These students are just amazing. And I should mention, I'm just going to run through a few of these slides here. An exchange student from Kazakhstan told Lauren on Saturday night that during the bonfire over s'mores, that this is my favorite day in the United States. And she's been here with us for 8 years. During a session, What Ryla Means to Me, a student stood up and said, I'm a senior, and prior to Ryla, I was nervous about going to college because I didn't know how I would be able to make friends. And that takes a break. But I catch myself here. Because of Ryla, I'm not as nervous about going to college because I know I can now make friends, and it isn't even that hard. Isn't that great? And Lauren said, I love investing time with youth because someone invested time in me at their age, just trying to pay it forward and do my part as I'm blessed in so many ways. Isn't that incredible? So there's Lauren, a few students. Isn't that fantastic? All these wonderful pictures. And there's John, some Rotaract members who were mentoring. Look at that. Now watch this. 1, 2, 3. And so on and so forth. Just absolutely amazing. And there's one picture here that I want to quickly show you. I think I passed it. There was a shirt about leadership and mentorship that was just very powerful. So that's Ryla. The next series that I wanted to show you is this. Well, this is part of a series. In fact, Dave Meyer brought in a beautiful board over there with a lot of information about the refugee family and the refugee project that I'd love for you to look at. But it's a big week for the Mohammadi family. This week is their move to a permanent residence at a Union at Crescent. And just a reminder to the refugee family to stay afterwards. But isn't this an extraordinary picture? The family comes from an arid climate and they really hadn't seen water, hadn't seen green. And this was their first visit to a lake, and this is Lake Griffey Lake in Bloomington. Isn't that an extraordinary picture? Good. A reminder to all of you to please help Rotaract on Instagram. We want to be able to vote them into success. They're in a competition. We'll send you more information about that. And then we had our Pete Ellis road cleanup on Saturday. This is Dave and Cindy and some others of us who are picking up trash. And of course, look at Art's fantastic vehicle. Look at this. Look at that. Yeah. And then Michael was competing with him. Michael Shermis in his car, and Amy. We had a fabulous time on Saturday. Good. And then the Sobremesa Farm, just a few pictures that have come through from us, the district grant. These are a few pictures of experiences of elementary school kids. And a huge thanks to the volunteers of our club who made that possible as well. Good. So those were my pictures. You can stop sharing, but isn't that fabulous? All the incredible work that comes out of Rotary. Okay. Second Quarter volunteers, we're always inviting you to come to the podium and speak your mind and tell us about what you're thinking. There are many spaces available to you, so please go ahead and fill up the sign up sheet with your names. The Business Outlook Forum coming up on November 10th. Want to thank Kyla so much for helping us with developing that project. And then the Friends of Rotary Foundation gathering in Columbus, November 18th. So just put that in your minds as well. And then again, the book club reading Zori by Laird Hunt. And that's another fabulous book with an end date for that on January 18th. So those are the club updates. I think what we'll do right now is just go directly into, we'll go into reflection, shall we, with Kyla? Kyla Cox-Deckard, one of our amazing members.
Thank you, President Alon. So my daughter Lucy just joined Girl Scouts, and I'm wondering how many in here are Girl Scouts? Okay, the thought occurred to me that had I been able to ask this question to our club when I joined Girl Scouts, there likely wouldn't have been any hands raised. So Lucy is so excited about Girl Scouts, and she had so many questions for me about what the experience was going to be like and what she was going to get to do. And this started me on my own personal reflection about the activities I did through Girl Scouts, through this wonderful, school-supported program that I attended with my classmates. And then made me think about all of the different experiences I had that were truly formative to me from kindergarten all the way through my senior year in high school. And I told Lucy that in Girl Scouts, I visited the Indiana Memorial Union. And in fact, just on the other side of this wall, we took a lovely tour of the Union building. And it was an amazing experience to see what else is in our town besides my little school, my little rural home. And we often hiked to the Cascades waterfall, and I've since been able to watch this waterfall hike become even more accessible to Bloomington residents as the Parks and Rec department has invested a lot of dollars into boardwalk infrastructure. And I took many wonderful school field trips, including community theater performances at the John Waldron Arts Center, then at that time run by the Bloomington Area Arts Council, and visited the IU Art Museum, now the Eskenazi Museum of Art, and was able to take a look at studio spaces there on campus that later as an undergraduate, I would be drawing and painting within. We got to go out to Bradford Woods. We visited Myers Hall and the biology department. And I even got to have a school-sponsored shadowing day where I shadowed Professor Jim Capshew. And he took me to the Union for a meeting. We got to be in the Distinguished Alumni Room. I always bring up this meeting every time I'm in that room. I have such fond memories. So I spent half the day shadowing him and half the day shadowing my aunt, Betty Jo Colson, who worked for 92.3 WTTS. And so it's not lost on me that I ultimately ended up being a communicator, writing ad scripts for Indiana University. And so I have to think that shadowing experience is very formative to me. And it's also no surprise that having all these wonderful, enriching experiences, I would find myself working for the Center for Rural Engagement at IU and getting to work with wonderful colleagues like our president, Alon Barker, bringing really amazing, very engaging experiences to students all across the state of Indiana, not just here in Bloomington, as I was so privileged to have that experience in my hometown. Now, many other hometowns from Paoli to Salem to Huntingburg are all having these same experiences that I had as a student. And then I thought about Rotary. And it was like a light went on, thinking of all the engaging experiences Rotarians are offering to students, which we were able to recap just a few moments ago, from the visits to the local farm, to Lotus Blossom activities, to RILA, obviously a very impactful experience, our support of Interact, and all of our classification outreach that we do as Rotarians to be able to show our children here what's possible here in our home Indiana towns. So I thank Rotary and I thank everyone who has been part of my formative experience as a kid. And I appreciate everything that everyone is doing to help our K through 12 kids see what life in Indiana can really be like. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyla. And I just want to echo the sentiment that the more we get involved in these projects, the more amazing they become and the richer our lives are. So I want to thank all of you for being committed to this incredible organization and for the things that you do. We do actually have time for happy dollars. So for those of you who've been wishing to say something, Liz Feidel is going to start with happy dollars.
I am happy that my sports locker got to be involved in the production and creation of the T-shirts that the RILA organization was able to have at their event.
And they were beautiful. Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those of you online, if you have anything that you'd like to say, please let us know. We can bring you in as well. Charlotte's next.
And on my birthday last week, the first phone call I got was from Astoria. And it was really remembered, really. I was the first Rotary Youth Exchange person to Bloomington. She called to wish me happy birthday.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, wow, that's great. I've got Lynn,
1976.
1976. She was here in 1976. Wow.
I'm happy because the World Series starts this week and you gotta love baseball. And I'm happy that I got to celebrate part of Charlotte's wonderful birthday with her.
Yay, good, good. And then Art at the back? Art at the back there, Art.
Here's a couple happy dollars. I'm happy because my wife left town for 4 days to spend
So you're just giving us $4 for the 4 days?
to spend some time with my son. They're going to Chicago, do the river tour. I'm happy because she getting to spend time with him, not because she left.
Because Connie Shikalis is going to be Rosie the River there at our next event for my sister's closet. It's going to be amazing because she'll be there.
That's great. The amazing Connie Shikalis. How about somebody online? Anybody with a thought there? Raj, how's it going with you these days?
I'm happy because I have a new daughter-in-law. Last Saturday, my son got married on Saturday.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations. That's great.
President Elan, for your recognition, I will honor $10 contribution to the good cause.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you. Thank you. And Ann Bright has something to say as well online.
I'd also like to give 10 happy dollars because I was able to go to Marble Hill Farm last week, where your Rotary District grant also provided for 25 or 45 kids from Clear Creek Elementary to learn about the value of soil, the importance of healthy eating. The kids had a ball, but the presenters at our 4 different stations also gave them wonderful information, and it was through your Rotary District grant.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for being there and for being our Rotary member at that project.
It was a lot of fun.
Good. Good, good, good. Well, we'll have one more. Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm happy because I just got back from 10 days in Idaho. And I was a Girl Scout till I graduated from high school. Got to go to Idaho for the Girl Scout International Roundup in 1965 with 10,000 girls from all over the world. So I was back in the same territory and I knew I was in the right place when in one of my hotel rooms, they had a little package of s'mores, you know, to be a kit. And then we went out to lunch yesterday on the way to the airport and they had a little tiny little thin charcuterie board with s'mores on it with a little tiny little, hibachi to roast them. So that Girl Scout experience, it sticks with you your whole life.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really great. Good. Do we have,
President Elan,
oh, Raj?
I will give $10 in recognition of my dear and good friend who is a guest with us today, Phil Emerson.
Excellent. Yeah, good. Thank you. And finally, I'll give $5.50 in celebration of the fact that I was able to get on my bicycle. It was the second ever Hilly 100 with 55 miles. So I'm happy about that. Okay, good. Lynn, I believe that we have a very special guest with us today.
Well, hello, everyone. This is week 2 of Meet Your Congressional Candidates, a very, very important time of year for all of us. I am delighted to introduce Erin Houchin. She has represented the 47th District in the Indiana State Senate since 2014. She served as a member of the Senate Committees on Commerce and Technology, Elections, Family and Children's Services, Homeland Security and Transportation, Utilities and Veterans Affairs, and the military. Erin did receive her bachelor's degree from IU and holds a master's in political management from George Washington University. Prior to serving in the state Senate, Erin served as Southeast Indiana Regional Director for U.S. Senator Dan Coates and was a governor's appointee to the Indiana Commission for Women. Erin is a small business owner, is founder and president of Contend Communications, and lives in Salem, just down the road, with her husband Dustin and their 3 children. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Erin Houchin.
Thank you, Lynn. And I have to give special recognition to Kyla. Is she still in the room? Hi. Thank you for the work you're doing in Salem, our hometown. Our kids are in Salem Community Schools and have certainly benefited from the work that the Center for Rural Engagement is doing there. Particularly my son, who's very musical and appreciates every time you guys are able to bring that to us. So thank you very much. I'm Erin Houchin. I grew up in Scottsburg, Indiana. My dad was a dentist. He told me, Erin, you can be anything you want to be in the world. Just please don't be a dentist. He loved his patients. I also am from a Rotarian family. My grandfather was in Rotary for many, many years until he passed away, still as an active member of Rotary when he left us. But I've had a long history of wanting to serve others. I think because my dad so much loved his patients, even if he didn't like the practice of dentistry so much. But he grew up very poor, and he worked at the American Can Company in Austin, Indiana, to put himself through college and dental school. He knew about halfway through dental school he didn't want to be a dentist, but he was too far in at that point to turn around. He practiced for until he was 55. He got diagnosed with Parkinson's and retired early. I went to IU. My dad told me I could go anywhere I wanted to college. So I said Florida State University. And he said, in Indiana. And I said, Notre Dame. And he said, that's a public school. And I said, definitely IU. So I came here as a freshman in 1995. I studied psychology. I was a Phi Mu here on campus. And I had a lot of friends in the business school. Turns out IU has a really good business school. Not sure if we know this. But my friends were all doing internships and I was doing lab experiments. And I thought, I should probably try to do an internship. I got an email from the State House, from the State Senate and the State House of Representatives about internships in state government. And I thought that sounds really interesting. Maybe I could do that. So I interned in the State Senate as a senior at IU in 1999. That's where I met my husband. He was an intern in the House. He was the only House intern I met. He was from Washington County. We never met until we got to the State House. And he pursued me for a long time before I said yes. But it has been a tremendous partnership. He is also an elected official. I actually ran his first campaign for prosecutor of Washington County about, 16 or 17 years ago. I was a stay-at-home mom at that time. So after the internship, I loved that so much that I wanted a job at the State House. I just loved being part of the policy. So I called the State House and Senate offices every Friday for 6 weeks in a row until on the 6th Friday, I got hired as a legislative assistant in the House of Representatives. I did that for a short period of time, and then more money was dangled in front of my young eyes, and I took a job as the executive assistant to the state auditor. It was the hardest working year of my life. This person, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for now, knowing that her name was on the door, she was a perfectionist, and it was a tough job. But my parents taught me a couple of things. Don't leave a job until you have another one. If you make commitments, keep them. And then the final thing was, don't have a lot of gaps in your resume. I had just left the House of Representatives after a pretty short stint and taken this new job, and I'd signed a lease in Indianapolis. So I stayed a year. And after the year, after my lease ended, I took a temp job in marketing to get back home, so I could finish my college education, taking my last 2 classes at IU here in Bloomington. I would drive to finish my last 2 classes, which were Philosophy 101 and Classical Mythology. That's what I had to do to finish my degree. But after that experience, it was so tough, I went completely off of politics for a short period of time. I served as a family case manager. I went into social work, so I was a family preservation worker for New Hope Services down in Jeffersonville, Indiana. And I worked in that role as a liaison really between families struggling and the Department of Child Services, with the hope that intervention early on would lead to better outcomes for these families, and that they would not be involved in the court system through the Department of Child Services. I was working in that, and I thought I could really do more for these families if I was a family case manager, and I was writing the case plans for these families instead of implementing somebody else's case plan. So I applied for family case manager positions all over Indiana. I finally got hired in Shelbyville, and I worked for the Shelby County Office of Family and Children for just about a year. And that was, at the time, we got my husband, who I met as an intern, finally said yes, and we got married and moved and settled in Washington County. And that's when I transitioned to the Scott County Department of Child Services. So I had a total of about 3 years in child services, which is why I think the Senate put me on the Family and Children's Services Committee. But after retiring from that work, I ran my husband's campaign, stayed home with my kids, and was very active in politics. It was through that that I decided to go get my master's degree at the George Washington University. And I really, even though I had that bad experience working for an elected official, I still was driven to serve in some capacity, which is why I wanted to get the education at George Washington. So I did it all online from Salem, Indiana, as a stay-at-home mom. I would put the kids to bed at 9 o'clock and study until 3 in the morning and get up and be a mom again the next day. And it was about halfway through that program, one of my professors said, 90% of the people in this program get a job offer in the field before they graduate. And I thought, wow, I'm the 10%. I'm living in Salem, Indiana. I love this education. It was tremendous, but I'm probably not getting a job offer in the field, at least not anytime soon. And I kid you not, about a week later, I got a call from U.S. Senator Dan Coates. They said, hey, Erin, we're looking for a regional director to serve the Southeast. Would you be interested? My husband said, go up and talk to him, but don't take a job if they offer it. And I said, oh, okay. I went up for the interview. They offered me the job. I took it and called him on the way home. I served for Senator Coates during what I call Dan Coates 2.0. He was a tremendous boss. In fact, after that bad experience, it was a little bit difficult for me to get back on that horse again, working for another elected official. But it was a tremendous experience, one of the best that I've ever had. And he was a great leader, a great statesman, and someone that I'm proud to have had the opportunity to learn from. And one time I did ask him, you know, you're really good to your staff. I want you to know how much I appreciate that. I've worked for a lot of people that weren't so kind. And he said, I started as a staffer. I know the work that you do. So I will take that with me should I get the opportunity to serve in Congress. I have taken it with me as I've served in the state Senate. My legislative assistant has been with me for 4 years. And either he just doesn't have a better offer or we're doing okay. So he's been great. My time in the State House has been something I want to touch on. It's been a little bit challenging. Working in child services, I never had a problem as a female in the workspace. But when I went to the State House, it was a little bit like stepping back in time. So being a female in politics is no easy feat. You have to be kind of tough, but not too tough. You have to stand your ground, but not so firmly that you turn people away. I want to just touch a little bit, if I can, on some of those challenges. There aren't very many of us as females serving in elected office on both sides of the aisle. And one of the things that I think we lack are mentors. If you read any book on how to move into the C-suite or succeed in business, there's usually mentorship involved in that somehow. And there aren't a lot of female elected officials to serve as mentors for other people. When I ran for office the first time, the Republican Party told me, hey, we want to see more women elected. And I thought, great, here I am. And then they said, go see if the other women will help you though, because we don't get involved. So that's a challenge, right? But guess what? I went to those other female leaders like Sue Ellspermann and Becky Skillman and Connie Lawson, who I interned for and who became the Secretary of State, and they were there for me. I'm grateful for that. And I want to pay that forward. But being in the Senate, there are very few mentors and there are more limited opportunities to be mentored. In fact, one day I was on the Senate floor and there was a group of my male colleagues standing around talking about going on a fishing trip together in Canada. And I jokingly said, do I get to go on this fishing trip? They were like, well, our spouses aren't going to be there. I can bring my husband. Well, you'll have to maybe go to the bathroom outside. Like I've never done that before. I grew up in Scott County. I'm country, okay? I can do this. And I was half joking. They did take the fishing trip, but then I took an opportunity after they returned to just explain to the leadership that it may be a good opportunity, a good idea to have those opportunities that everyone can participate in. Men and women, their families included. So as a result of my noise, my polite noise, we now have an annual retreat for everyone, families welcome, and that's a great bonding experience that doesn't exclude anyone. It is challenging, and we may have to push the envelope a little bit because women not only need other women to mentor them, but they need men to mentor them too. And we may have to change the dynamic a little bit because there is risk involved in that. But I believe most people are good, and when we find the right mentors and pair them up, I think that can be a huge success. But we have to change the way we think about historical boundaries or barriers in this process. The other thing I'll mention is that women often don't put themselves out there as readily. They want to make sure and feel like they've got everything answered, everything, before they step into an office. And then sometimes you guys go into it and then figure it out later or figure it out as you go. We don't have that luxury, but ladies, we need to do better about that. Because you are qualified, you are ready, you are prepared to take on any challenge. And yes, we can figure it out as we go too. I like to encourage other young women to think of themselves as a CEO. You don't have to know everything to be a great CEO, but you do have to put a good team around you. So lead your team and build your team and find success that way. The only other thing I'll mention in this arena is that it is a challenge, but it's worth the challenge. It may be harder, but we're going to be better for going through that hard work. I always say if I have to work harder, I will. Women have to do a better job of lifting up other women. Jennifer Ruth Green is my friend running up in District 1 in Indiana, in Gary, Indiana, and she says, what's the point of blazing the trail if it never becomes a road? And I wholeheartedly believe that. So there aren't limited opportunities for women. I'm often the only female in a boardroom or a meeting, but that doesn't mean there aren't more chairs that can be pulled up for other women. So we do have to, I think, do a better job of understanding as female leaders that these opportunities are not finite. They aren't limited. There are plenty of opportunities for us to lead, both men and women. We need us all. We need everybody at the table to move this country forward. A couple of things I'll note on the political front, and I won't get political, but I will say that on November 8th, should we be successful in this election, I'll be the first female to ever be elected in the country's history to represent this district in Congress. I'm very proud of that. It's taken a lot of hard work. We've been in the trenches for 20 years, helping candidates. I always thought I would just be a behind the scenes person. I really didn't think I would be the person serving in these offices. But when I was working for Dan Coates, I was serving the people in my Senate district. And I thought I may be able to do some good work there. So I ran for that office. It was a 50.5% Republican district when we ran. We won with 58% of the vote, and we served there for 8 years until now. And during that time, I looked for gaping holes in systems, like limited access to broadband. So I filed a bill that created the broadband grant program, which has resulted in $350 million of investment in broadband expansion. And the state went from 17% access to 1 gig speeds to now 87% access to 1 gig speeds because we tried to fill that big gaping system gap. Another is fixing the Department of Child Services, something I'm very passionate about. I authored Senate Bill 1, which was really the Foster Care Improvement and Support for Foster Parents Act is what I would like to call it. And finally, children with dyslexia. My son's dyslexic. I noticed in first grade he was struggling to read. And because of our experience and the challenges that we had trying to get him the resources that he needed, I discovered there were huge system gaps in our school systems for identifying and addressing dyslexia. It's a reading disability that you can overcome. You never are cured from it, but you can learn to read. You just have to be taught a different way. It requires having tutors in place. So my husband and I help fund a nonprofit locally that trains teachers and tutors in Washington County. There were no resources south of Indianapolis for any students with dyslexia after, I think it was Pinnacle School closed here in Bloomington. So we started our own programs in Washington County and are now prepared through a Lilly grant and other funding sources to expand that to other counties in the region and other students outside of Washington County. It's something that we're very proud of. I'm looking forward to the work ahead, hopefully serving you in Congress. And thank you for having me here today and for the service that you each do in your own lives and taking care of your community. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Erin. I'd love for you to speak briefly about your platform that you're running on for our votes.
Sure. I will tell you that what I hear most from constituents is inflation is a huge issue. They're concerned about border security. They are concerned about education. And those are the 3 top issues that I hear about most. So we're going to be focused on those few things at the top of mind of voters, which is try to get inflation under control by reducing spending and utilizing our own energy resources here as we can. Border security, it will be all hands on deck. Any ability we have to secure the border, we'll be focused on trying to do that, as well as an education. I'm a huge supporter of school choice and giving parents, empowering parents to, be in charge of their kids' education and encouraging them to be involved. I work for the Community Alliance Promoting Education, which my job was to be the liaison between families struggling to get their kids to school for whatever reason and the school system. And we found that just having another person there as a champion really helped them to engage with the school corporation. And it could be hygiene, it could be a number of things, keeping kids at home and not in school, but we're going to be focused on finding solutions to those things.
Sure. I wanted to know how you plan to stay in contact with your constituents should you be elected.
Sure. We are going to have a robust communications department. I think Trey Hollingsworth has had regular text messages and surveys going out. So we will be utilizing a texting campaign as well as email newsletters. And then, of course, I'll be as accessible as I can be back here at home. This is my home, not Washington, D.C., so I want to be here as much as possible, meeting and talking with the folks that we represent.
Thank you very much. I met you over at a pizza meeting on College Island. I didn't get to ask this question. I'm a very great supporter of Dan Coates. I went to college with him. And he was here at the Hamilton Luger School with a bipartisan presentation after the war in Ukraine. And so I got talking to him about various issues. And I asked him about Jim Banks, who's now in the Congress. And he said, well, I supported Jim Banks, but I can't support him right now because he's drunk the Trump Kool-Aid and I can't support him. If you were elected to the Congress, would you also drink Trump Kool-Aid or do you see some differences with our former president?
I can tell you that generally speaking, I think that former state legislators or former elected officials do a good job of working in a bipartisan way when they get to Congress. And that's because we've had to do that as members of the General Assembly. So most of the stuff we work on at the State House, although the news doesn't report it, most of the stuff we work on is either unanimous or bipartisan. So I work with Democrats to increase adoption subsidies for foster families, and I work on the broadband issue with Democrats. And so for me, it's going to be looking at what I believe are the policies that are going to move the country forward. Dan Coates was a great example and somebody that I will hope to emulate. Yeah.
Yep. Who died recently. Owen Johnson, and when we several years ago when Trey Hollingsworth was here, he asked a question, and I want to reiterate that. I think I know the answer to some of this, but the question was, who during three figures who you emulate particularly?
Well, I really liked Mitch Daniels as a leader. I think he was a dynamic leader that moved Indiana to the forefront for a lot of reasons. And when I was district chair, he was the governor, so I got to work closely with him. Dan Coates is certainly at the top of my list. And Connie Lawson, who served as the Secretary of State in she was the Indiana State Senator that I interned for. She was a tremendous leader as well, a very balanced, measured leader in our party. And so those three would be at the top of my list for my choices.
I almost regret having to ask this, but I need to. Can you tell me whether you agree that the presidential election in 2020 was fairly decided?
I think the election was certified by the states. So there were some things that happened that I would consider unconstitutional. And that is because secretaries of states, governors, even right here in Indiana, changed election laws during COVID, when that is exclusively the responsibility of state legislatures. Our legislature did not meet to change the election laws, and election laws were changed. So given that, I think there was a constitutional question on some of the elections that were held. However, those election results were certified by their states and Senate. So I don't want to relitigate the past. What I want to do is make sure that elections moving forward, the American people can have faith in the outcome.
Thank you for coming. My question is, you were one of the sponsors of the gun law that took effect here in Indiana. The vast poll shown says that the populace want some kind of control. And, so I'm feeling that the legislature isn't representing the majority constituency. How can this be addressed?
I can tell you that at least in my district, in my Senate district, in the Congressional district, that is a popular issue. It is not something, it may not be nationally, it may not be statewide, but the people that I represent do support it. What they also say is that they want to keep the gun laws as they are now. However, I'm certainly open to conversations about how to make things more safe. Yes, I was the sponsor of that bill, but I also helped shepherd through the red flag legislation that we upgraded in the last legislative session to close loopholes. And those loopholes were closed well in advance of the FedEx tragedy that the prosecutor in Marion County did not enforce. So there are laws on the books that are protective that our prosecutors and the judicial system should enforce that aren't being done. And the red flag law is one of those examples. Anyone online? I see John Zody's on the line. Hi, John. How are you? And
You've encouraged women to be CEOs and make decisions. Can you tell me if you supported the bill that took away Indiana women's rights to make decisions about abortion?
I was not in the legislature for that, but I would have voted for the bill that they had. I think we have to support life. Our Constitution says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So those are, to me, they are lives. I would have supported the bill that the legislature passed, but I also had a 15-week bill that I wanted to put through the General Assembly in advance of the decisions of Roe v. Wade, or I'm sorry, of the Dobbs decision, modeled after the Mississippi law. I think that those are lives, so that's just my opinion. One more, if you have it. Yes, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say how inspiring it is to have you with us and to hear about your life and what has led to this place that you're at right now in your political life, but also in your personal life. It's really very inspiring to hear how you've got here. I've spent quite a bit of time in Salem myself because of the Rural Engagement Project, and I look very much forward to continuing to expand my horizons as I get to know about Indiana a bit more. So my question, I'm from South Africa. South Africa, there was no vote. There was no democratic vote in South Africa until 1994. And as I've come to the United States, I personally have been worried about a lot of the dynamic that I saw politically in South Africa re-revealing itself in the fracturing of perspectives, in the way that we tend to live in our own spaces, we tend to live in our own echo chambers, and we tend to develop our own tropes as we fight for the things that we feel that we really care about. So my question for you is, going forward, what will you do to make sure that we can come together as a country?
Thank you for that question. That's a real challenge. Everybody's got their own media outlet that they go into their corners, and which is why I go back to folks that have served in elected office with members of the opposite party tend to be good serving members because they have had to have some of those conversations, and you have had to come to terms with some disagreements. Greg Taylor, who is the leader of the Senate for the Democrats, is a very, very good friend of mine. And we don't agree on most anything, but yet we've worked together on many things. And so I think that is telling, especially when you can see one another as human beings outside of the political arena, which we often do. So I'm going to be looking for, as I said, big system gaps that we can fill, that we can fix. And if Republicans or Democrats or independents or anyone wants to join me in solving these big problems, I welcome that. I think iron sharpens iron. So the more conversations we can have, it does end up making better legislation in the end.
Thank you so much. And in thanks to you, we actually support organizations. So all of our guests, we like to let them know that there's an organization that we choose every quarter to support in honor of your presence with us. Stages Bloomington. I don't know if you know about the organization. It's a wonderful arts organization that supports the theatrical arts. And we give them money every quarter. So thank you so much for being with us. Good. Yeah. So a few people to thank for the meeting today. I just want to be sure. Art Omic, thank you so much for greeting our guests, for stepping up to the plate there. Sally, thank you for introducing our guests. Tyler, likewise, thank you so much for producing today. Joy, as always, Kyla, for your reflection, and then Jim for doing our roundabout reporting for the month. Next week, November 1st, we're into November already. We have Paul Helmke, who's with us today, and he's going to be on the podium next week, giving us his thoughts about the midterm elections. I should mention that he's the former president and CEO of the Brady Center and Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, as well as a 3-term mayor of Fort Wayne. And he's a professor of practice at the O'Neill School. So it's going to be really fabulous to have you with us and illuminate some of what we've been hearing over the last 2 weeks. So with that said and done, let's do our 4-way test as our guest, as we think about our conversations today. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it at all concerned? Third, would it build goodwill and better friendship? And fourth, will it benefit all? And fifth, can we have some fun? Thank you all so very much. Thank you.